Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where we talk all things Commander. And this week, we have hot takes, but we're not actually sure. So maybe some theory crafting, some ideas we think are worth exploring, but we're not 100% locked in on them. So we can tell each other how dumb we are or how brilliant we are. Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How are you doing today?
I'm doing super good. Excited to have some more hot takes. Should be fun.
Tomer, Budget Commander, what's up?
I'm doing well, but I have to admit that all my hot takes are correct, so I'm always 100% sure.
Yeah, these are not actually hot takes. These are the coldest takes
Yes.
if you are true believers. Krim, you never have hot takes. What's going on?
I've got some pretty spicy ones that I'm not sure like is gonna be an easy pill to swallow, but
It'll be too
well,
hot.
I might they might be too
It's
hot.
so hot that you can't tell they're hot anymore. You're like, is this cold? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then I am the Codfather, Richard, and I never say ridiculous things. I don't know what to do about this podcast.
Maybe your nickname
So-
should be the hot take. like,
They're not. They're alleged hot takes. because
Alleged.
Everything I say is
Alleged.
correct. Okay, we'll put hot takes in air quotes. Before we get to today's show, we gotta go over our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by Ultimate Guard, premium protection for your trading cards. If you want to look cool like us with all the accessories we use on Commander Clash, playmats, deck boxes, sleeves, you can get them at ultimateguard.com. And then today's show is also brought to you by Card Conduit, the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. Card Conduit lets you skip all the typing, time, and work associated with buy listing. Their curated service lets you send as many cards as you want with buy list value of $1 or more, and you pay just a 5% service fee. You can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards and pay only 2%. You get a detailed report and fast payment once your order is processed. You can get 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/mtggoldfish. So thank you to our sponsors. And it's time for the Ultimate Guard comment of the week. So last week's podcast was, does Magic have a lands problem? Top comment, Loach5348. Air quotes. Internal discussions has got to be everyone else yelling at Richard after every recording. All right, who leaked it? Who leaked it? Who leaked this?
That was actually my comment. Thanks for reading it out, Richard.
Tomer's
We're gonna have to have another internal discussion after this. All right. On to today's main topic. Hot takes, but we're not sure. Okay, I'm gonna kick things off. So I have allegedly said many dumb things on this podcast.
allegedly.
Allegedly, according to certain people. But I think this one might be too crazy for Richard. Shocks are overrated and now should be cut from mana bases. I am cutting shock lands from mana bases. I'm not even trolling you guys. I didn't just make this up for a podcast topic. I've been seriously thinking about this. And I'm going to present to you Exhibit A. If editor can flash up Exhibit A, I have proposed a 3-color shockless mana base for you guys. And here's the theory, okay?
Okay.
Number 1, land cycle in Magic the Gathering are fetch lands. Okay?
Yeah.
You need to fetch something with them, right? So they used to be shock lands. Now they're surveil lands. Okay? So surveil lands are what you fetch with your fetch lands. And then the number 3 cycle in Magic the Gathering is bounce lands. So that's it. You filled up all of your colored slots with this. You don't have room for the 4th cycle of duels, which would have been shock lands. So here's my proposed mana base, okay? 6 fetches, because you got to play off-color fetches to make sure you actually hit your surveil lands. 3 surveil lands, 1 triome. All the fixing you need that's fetchable. 5 bounce lands, right? So 3 bounce lands for the colors that are in your 3-color deck. Arid Archway and Guildless Commons. Okay? 9 basic lands. Tomer, I know you're happy about this. We cut the shock lands to put basics in so we can play cards like Land Tax and Surveyor Scope,
I like it.
right? And then we can use like swords and stuff, but that you're up to 9 basics now, and that is the reason. And then you have 4 staple lands: Command Tower, Myriad Landscape, Reliquary Tower, Thespian Stage, 4 MDFCs. This is a Jeskai mana base, so we have Shatterskull Smashing, Valgate Awakening, Seagate Restoration, Ondu Inversion, 7 flex slots. I've listed these are actually played all the time, but like Diamond City, Exotic Orchard, Lotus Field, Odawaru, Path of Ancestry, Temple of the False God, Yavimaya. That gives you 39 lands, including MDFCs. There's no room for shocks, right? Like if you really want to play shocks, you would cut the basics down, but then you don't have any basics anymore. And then you all yell at Richard for not playing basics, right? So we cut the shocks, we put the basics in, and then now our Solemn and our Land Tax is live. Am I smoking? Like, is this not what your mana bases look like? You guys are like, oh,
I'm
play
really
more
proud.
basics. Like, what do you cut?
I'm really proud of you.
I-
I'm really proud of you.
You are so high.
Wait, so
you
Nine
are
basic
so.
there. I know that hurts.
You're just
We're
replacing
so
dual
high.
lands to add the basic lands? That is the most counter
Pretty
Richard thing
much.
I have ever heard. Why? Wait, so is your goal of this
Surveyor
to play
Scope.
more basics?
Surveyor Scope
Like, is
and Land
this?
Tax. Yes, for those 2 cards. Not because you're scared of Ruination, right? But because you want to play Surveyor Scope, Land Tax, and then now, your Solemn is a hit. It's not listed here, but you could play Myriad Landscape. You can play Burnished Heart, right? Because otherwise, you're on the 4 basic, 4 basics in your mana base. Everyone yells at me for like, oh, Richard, play more basics. How do you do it without cutting shock lands? Like, what are you gonna cut? Right?
Well, you
Like,
don't
this is
need-
the only way to make this work.
You really don't. I think shock lanes and surveil lanes, I kind of put them in the same category. It really. I would put like 1 shock lane and 1 surveil lane and then go from there. Because surveil lanes are great. Like they surveil, that's amazing. If you don't need that mana that turn, then obviously it's like strictly better than a shock. But like sometimes it's like turn 4 or whatever, and you want to play your 4 drop on turn 4, and that's when the shock land is good. Like,
But then you fetch up a basic. You fetch up the basics.
Yes,
Like,
some-
how many
you can-
times have you actually fetched shocked?
It's-
like you can count on like you can count on a single hand the amount of times the group as a whole has
Yes.
fetched shocked, right? And I can
Oh.
count. I
I
can count. I need an abacus to count the number of times we've used the surveil land as the shock target, right? I'm sorry, as the fetch target.
The
What's the
basic is
shock last?
good, but like the shock does allow you more versatility on your spells. I think they're both. I think they're both equal, honestly. Like sometimes you want
So,
the
but
shock.
what would you cut? You cut the bounce land? Like,
I-
what do you cut to fit
I-
all for everything in?
I-
here?
Just
I
play
don't-
less
utility
basics.
No,
Just play
I-
less basics.
you
Never.
cut the
It's
basics.
so
Never.
simple.
Never. It's only
so
9.
simple.
It's
Y'all
like, oh,
ragging on me for playing no basics. And you're like, oh, Richard,
I-
cut the basics, which is what I normally do. And you're like, that's so irresponsible of you.
I really
I
like
haven't been
cut
ragging
one.
on ya.
I
We
cut
were
the two
talking about
colors.
in a monocolor deck. How do you not have basics? You are looking at a 3-color mana base that now has mostly not.
But
It's
is it-
not even enough basics to
Land
not
tax.
get ruinationed. My boy
Land tax
Richard
is
is
so
prepping
good.
for the winter.
There is
moon.
never
One
enough
card.
basics to get rid of Ruination. That's why you just ignore it, right? But Land Tax, Surveyor Scope, Burnished Heart, Myriad Landscape, Crozen Verge grabs non-basic, so you're fine.
Crozen Verge-
I don't know, like Solemn, if you're blinking Solemn.
I
Did
would actually cut
Did
the
you add?
Myriad.
Did you add Myriad Landscape just to justify the fact that you added so many more basics?
Don't you always run Myriad Landscape, by the way? Is that not?
No,
always-
'cause I don't have
always
basics.
run it?
Yeah,
I used to be team Myriad Landscape, but I just find it way too slow. So I've taken it out of basically all my decks except for my 6-drop deck. It feels bad. It taps for colorless and it's just battlefield tapped. And then you have to pay essentially 3 mana to ramp you 1 land later on. And it just feels awkward. Like you're gonna do this on
What?
turn
That's so
3
good.
sometimes.
I cut it because I can't support it in my mana base. Like
I don't
I
know.
play like 3 basic land fetchers and then 3 basics, and I'm like, oh, hope I don't mill a basic, right? Like,
Why Yavimaya in this mana base? I get it if you're overloaded on like Glacial Chasms, Maze of Abyss, like stuff that doesn't make mana, but does it do anything
no,
meaningful in
that's
this
just
mana
my
base?
edge. So normally, like say, so if you're a black mana base, right, you have a lot more staples in your flex. Like you'd play Coffers, you'd play Orborg.
Mm.
You have like a ton of like Phyrexian Tower. So I was just trying to hedge in that like usually there's a land that's like always gonna be there in this colors, but you wouldn't play Yavimaya in this.
Why
in an
wouldn't you? You
actual
could
just
acid
Valkyrie
rain.
base.
You could
Honestly,
acid
You
rain.
could.
Yeah.
honestly,
Turns on
like,
temple.
I think you can.
It does.
Let's say you want to keep 9 basics, which maybe you want to because of land tax and some of
Yeah.
those cards. I think you can
Yeah.
make it work and still play 3 shocks, right? Like go down 1 flex slot, go down the Myriad
go
Landscape,
6 basics?
go down like 1. Well, no, you can stick at 9 and cut like Myriad Landscape, the Yavimaya maybe, or like some Diamond City. Is Diamond City actually that good?
but
like, do you need 7
the flex is
slots?
not really flex though, right? Because you need the lands for whatever your theme is. So, for example,
Oh, so you
I
want
need
7
Rogue's
slots?
Passage. I need Mutavault. I've listed you like 7 staples you could just throw in there, but usually your theme will like drive 4 to 5 lands anyway, right? Like for whatever your commander or your deck is doing. So like the flex slots are not really flex slots, right? I'd probably call them like on theme slots or something. But yeah, you could cut them. Like, would you cut them though? Like, would you go down to 4 flex slots just to run 3
Hon-
shock lands?
In all truthfulness, what I would do is I wouldn't play the off-color fetches just because they annoy me. They just look weird, so I don't play the
But
off-color
they're another
fetches.
surveil land. They're the only thing gluing this mana base together because you're like,
So,
wow, I could get the
have-
triome off of it.
Have we went to the point where surveil lands are now overrated? I feel like we might have. Like, I feel like we went from like surveil lands being massively underrated during spoiler season to now we're cutting shock lands because we want to get this tap land into play because it surveils one. That's a little much for me. Ooh.
Richard's going a little too hot here on this hot take. I'm
Look,
sorry,
okay.
like
I'll give you this stat. This mana base is 21 color sources of a color, right? So if you assume the fetches can get you any color, 25 untapped sources, right? The other way to phrase that is what? 14 tap sources, right?
Ooh, that's a
Like,
big
I don't know
number.
what you guys make of those,
That's
but
too
I've
much.
literally been playing this mana base all Clash season, except I cut the basics down to 0. So not only do I put the shocks where the basics are, but I put even more flex and utility lands where the basics go, and I have 0 basics. Right? That's like literally what I've been playing all Clash.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
worked, right? Got Ruination once.
Long
Like, this
time
doesn't save you
watcher,
against Ruination.
Richard, love you, big time fan, long time watcher. I've noticed some struggles on the mana base sometimes.
But it works. like everyone's too comfy. Like Krim is playing like the tap cycle of fetchable lands. I'm like, why? Like, do you need like quad white, quad
Yes.
red or
Okay.
something on turn 4? Like,
Have
that's
you
too
ever try-
comfy.
Having
That's
a better
too-
mana
try-
base than Krim is a very low bar, Richard. Come on. Krim doesn't fight his 4th
No,
lane.
no, Krim has access to all colors at all times. He just doesn't have quantity. He
Yeah.
doesn't have quantity, but he can play like Obliterator into like Cryptic Command.
Yeah.
Like, no problem.
that's what we're here to do, and then follow it up with Vindicator, right? So like, I don't see what's okay. Why can't you just trim a few basics to play your shocks?
Because you want to play Surveyor Scope, land tax. You want to be prepared for Ruination.
I don't even. I'm not even talking about
wave of
Ruination
vitriol
Winter
or
Moon.
something. Like, I don't know, right? Like,
No one's gonna play
there
those
are some
cards.
basics payoffs. There are some basic payoffs, and now you can play them, right? Because we had the discussion where I can't play any of the basics payoff because I've cut all my basics.
Yes.
But I'm like, what are Shocklands doing for me? Let's cut those things.
Are the basic
I agree
payoffs
with
good
Richard.
enough to be worth
I-
it though?
Surveyor Scope has opened the way for 2 mana, Seth.
Yeah, although like last game we saw, like it did take you to like turn 9 or something to turn it on. Like, and then it was really good, but it's not like early game ramp necessarily, right?
It was actually like turn 5 or something where it
it
turned
felt
on, but I
very
did absolutely
late.
nothing. That's literally opened the way at that point, right? Like, that's a turn 5, 6 open the way.
Yeah.
But isn't that
But
worth it?
you're leaving this artifact out on the board, right? Like you're building your whole mana base weird.
all right?
Just
I tried to be
this one
responsible.
card that you might get in your
God,
one.
So
no,
what you're
no,
telling
no,
me it's
Ignite card.
okay to run 0 basics? in your
Well,
3
maybe
color
like
deck?
No,
maybe
no,
like
no,
3,
no.
one of each. One of each. You need one of each.
What's the point of that?
You gotta
To
respect the
support
path
your one
exile.
solemn?
Look,
You know,
look,
path
I,
exile. You might
Richard,
get pathed or besieged.
I'm totally fine with you going down to 0 basics now because my hot take is going to be feeding off that a little bit. So
All right. Let's go. Let's over. What is your hot take? Let's move on to your hot take.
We're bringing back non-basic hate. So I see you all being a little bit greedy, not
Kill
respecting.
Tomer first.
No. It's not that bad. So, like, okay, maybe dabble in ruination every once in a while because, like, I like basics and y'all don't. So maybe put the fear in you a little bit. You know, I was listening to Krim's argument about, like, you know, of making non-basic hate a little bit more accepted, not because you're going to be running it a lot, but because you have to respect the fact that there could be. And that's just enough to make it balanced. And I agree with Krim wholeheartedly on that. Like, as an artifact player, I have to run some non-artifact lanes because I know I'm going to get farewelled, right? Or else, why would I not just put every single artifact land on the deck? It makes sense. But so I figured run a little bit of ruination. That's what I'm going to be dabbling in. But more importantly, just run more non-basic hate that kind of just hurts instead of like removes all the lands. Because I don't want to blow up everybody's lands all the time. I don't want to do the new winter orb for non-basics. But like Price of Progress, yeah, I'm going to jam that on all my red decks. Like, okay, you don't want to run any basic lands? Why not get a free win? You know, it's like turn 8 or turn 10, and you're at like 15 life, and you have a bunch of non-basics on battlefield. Price of Progress, you're dead. That seems great. Don't run any basics, by all means.
I have a question. Wouldn't respecting ruination just mean trying to kill you first every game because we know you're the guy who probably is packing ruination? Like, isn't that what respect is in this scenario? Is that actually going to put you further ahead in the play group? Like, do you want our respect,
Our
Homer?
respect.
Do you really want our
Yeah,
respect
yeah,
in
yeah.
this,
The
in
ultimate
this
form of
situation?
respect.
Yeah.
I just gotta murder you.
Yes.
But I think this discussion highlights it, right? I play a 9 basic mana base. You guys are like too many basics. This does nothing against ruination. You're still gonna get wrecked by ruination with this mana base. So
No.
you're in a lose-lose situation, right? Like this mana base doesn't save you against ruination. So you might as well just play it and then kill the ruination player. Kind of like you respect the Kiki combo out of Tomer. Like, I don't know, he's playing red. Better just
Gotta
kill
get
him. Right?
No,
like,
this is
once you
more
get the
than enough.
reputation of running ruination,
This is more than
you're
enough
just
to
gonna
play
die.
around. But it, like, so these are just lands, right? So first of all, you have 9 basics,
But if I
and
go
then you
from
have
like 6 to 8 lands down to like 2 to 3, my game is over. Like,
You have-
like how'd you play around anything, right?
have
You're
essentially-
dead, right?
well, you have essentially 15 basics in your deck because your fetch lands can all get the basics. Then on top of that, you have something called ramp in the rest of your deck, and that's going to be hopefully basic land ramp. Like, you're in white, so I'm assuming you're going to be running the Knight of the White Orchid, you're going to be running the Loyal Warhound, you're probably going to have some mana rocks, like Arcane Signet will help you as well too, a Sol Ring will be helping you too. I don't think this is going to be like I fold to ruination at all. I think it'll be fine.
But the ruination player has like 10 lands and you're down to 3 and you're trying to ramp again. Like, your game is effectively over, right?
It is
You
pretty
might as
much.
well-
I
you have to
disagree.
counterspell the ruination or kill them.
We gotta
You
get
can't
more
be like, "Oh, I
ruination
got 3
games.
basics.
We got to get more
I got 3
ruination. games.
basics. I'm good.
I mean,
You're overselling it. Bring it back.
especially if it's now in Comic Sans font.
Oh, God.
oh
Comic
yeah.
Sans.
Oh,
Dude, that one-
wizards.
That one's so bad.
baby.
But
so
I-
bad, but it's so good.
I do agree with Price of Progress though, because actually, I don't know. What do you guys feel? So, do you think dying outright is better than getting like Armageddon? Like, is Price
Oh,
of
yeah.
Progress really
For sure.
better? It is.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
if-
Yeah, I never get
in this
salty
case,
with price
the
of progress.
half
It's a
measure
win.
helps, right?
Like-
Yeah.
taking 8 instead of 26 is
Yeah.
actually a win in terms of damage, rather than going down from 8 lands to 2 lands.
Like,
So it is kinder in that sense.
I'm not running any MLD on Clash, obviously. Like, we've already had the discussion. If you want to hear our discussion on that, check out last week's podcast. But like, Price of Progress, I think is like very social acceptable. No, like you've taken a gamble, you've run all non-basics, you've gone full greed. You can die. Like, I think that's fine, right?
Yeah, no, I think
There's
the
a
price
lot
of
of
progress
saucy...
perfectly fine.
So I think by the time this goes up, the Clash won't be up yet. But there's the Clash where I bring some saucy non-basic land hate.
Okay.
And it does a lot of work. We're going to have to wait 2 weeks for that to come out, though. So I think it's like 2 clashes from when this goes live that you're going to see it. But there's other damaged-based non-basic land hate that could work. And I think that's the way you run it. Like, I think that's the kindest way. But again,
Yeah.
like, I wouldn't run more basics. I would just try to like fog or counterspell or Teferi's Pro my way out of this rather than like run more basics to leverage,
Because
to
the
not
thing
die.
is, if you go back to your mana base, like, yeah, if you wanted to, you could try to play around it, but that means you're going to spend all your fetches, like, getting basics early in the game. Your mana's going to suck. You're never going to surveil. Like, is it worth that cost on the off chance that someone is, like, playing a Ruination? I don't think it is. It's like playing around Blood Moon in Modern. You don't just, like, fetch out all your basics every matchup because someone might have a Blood Moon. So I think, like, I don't think it would matter anyway. Like, I don't think it would save you.
I think this is like a very good, safe mana base too. If you're counting the ramp as well, this is fine against Blood Moon. I would not even sweat.
Wait, so we're saying that my mana base is good?
Yeah.
No shocks. if you're gonna fetch basics turns 1, 2, 3 anyway, what does the shock do for you, right? So you might as well
Like,
just cut them.
Crim's the biggest Ruination fan at the table, I believe. Like, do you think like if everybody was running these, would you aim for a Ruination, or do you think it's still gonna get some free wins?
I mean, well, I guess it's gonna touch up on something that I brought to the
what's
for
your
one of
hot
the
take?
topics I wanted to bring.
What's your
but I think I'd want to play more LD, but not in an LD focused deck. So like I'm talking like if I just have this, I don't know, like this random squirrel deck, but also it has Armageddon. Right? Like you know what I mean?
That just means we
Isn't that
always
the
have to
worst,
kill
though?
you first.
Yeah,
Because we
yeah,
never
yeah.
know when you might just have an Armageddon. Oh, God.
Yeah, I'm talking like I think that's the hot take that I want to try because
Just always be the LD guy.
the one thing that I'm always being told is that okay, the green player is just going to ramp farther ahead than the person LDing. I want to see that. I want to see it. I want to put it to the test. I want to see the numbers on it. I also I think you'll know I'm more likely to play MLD in non-green decks because everyone always like, well, the green player benefits the most. Well, I want to see if I can put that to the test. So
Do you build around it in your deck though? Like, do
No.
you play indestructible
God,
lands?
not at all.
or
No.
recursion?
maybe lightly, but like I'm not going to be like, oh, well, this is a pure stacks deck or this is a pure MLD deck. No, this is just going to be, I don't know, this is a chair dot deck, but with also Armageddon. Like,
But do you put like Darksteel Citadel, Flagstones of Traquair, or is
Again,
it literally just a normal chair deck and then you just slap
is-
an Armageddon?
it
in
is
there?
a normal chair deck, slap in Armageddon, because
But is there chair
I
art
think
with
that-
Armageddon?
I mean,
that's
I can
Homer
draw
found the
one.
real problem, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I
Flavor
can draw
fail.
one in
Where's
there.
the
All right,
flavor?
because I want to try that because I don't think like last week's podcast. I think one thing that is often brought up is that it's non-basic land hate exists. Correct. Yes, it does. My issue is not the non-basic lands. My issue is the quantity of lands. Yes, a lot of them
The
are also
basics are the
non-basic.
problem.
So no, I don't think it's basics that are a problem. I just think yes, Magic has a land problem.
There's too many of them.
There's
Yeah.
too many of them, and
Everybody
I
gets
think
to put
that
one
not
foot down every single turn. It's too much.
It's one a turn, great. And like people like Book Crim, those are just those don't happen in budget games. How many normal budget decks do you see? Farseek, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, like all these things that are still exponentially ramping you a ton. So that's why I want to try this, right? Just because it's like it's a nice counterplay, and even if I don't put it in there, I'm sure to some extent some of y'all will think I have it. Like how much
Is that good,
how
though?
much
Do you
It-
want
I mean,
you would
people
just
to
kill,
think
like,
that? Because
you
that
would
means
just
they just
kill
have to
Krim,
attack
right?
you all the time. Yeah, like
You're not
no,
gonna
no,
hold
I-
the land. You're just gonna kill Crim, right?
Yeah,
You're gonna
yeah,
force
but-
it out
but-
of him, right?
Right. But that's good, right? Like that's good. That
Is it?
now no, yeah, it is because now you are not just like, oh, well, Crim just exists and I'm gonna keep ramping. I'm gonna keep firing off all these
Crim-
spells.
Crim is the
Fear.
land martyr. He's like, I would rather just
Yeah.
literally die than,
Yeah.
than see people ramp.
But-
yes.
But if it's now me running Ruination and Crim running Armageddon, who do you kill first?
Oh, God.
oh, probably still me.
Yeah, probably still.
So
probably still
here's
Crim.
the problem. If you don't build your deck around it, Armageddon is gonna be a dead card like 90% of the time, right? Like
Yeah.
someone's gonna have if someone has a better board than you, Like, doesn't matter if they have more lands or not. Like, you Armageddon, you're gonna win, right? If you go down to 0 lands and someone else goes down to 0 lands, but they have like 2 mana dorks, they're probably gonna win. So like, you can't just fire it off. So I would at least build your deck around it. Not that it's like, you know, a land destruction deck, but you would play mana dorks, or you would play mana rocks, or indestructible lands. But the minute you do that, like, if I see like an indestructible artifact land in like your random chair deck, like alarm bells will go off immediately, and then you are gonna die. If you're not Tomer and you play 4 basics in a red deck, I'm killing you, right? Like, I'm like, that's way too many basics. If Seth rolls up with 6 basics, I'm like, oh, Seth's gonna die.
I've seen it
immediately,
happen.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
I've seen it happen.
like, we can't deal with this, right? So I don't know how you would do this, like
the
without
thing
getting
is-
murdered immediately.
Well, that's the game plan, right? You hope. I pray that I get to do enough early, and then fight back and keep myself alive long enough to then just fire it off, shut the door on the ramp player, and that's it. Like,
But you shut
be
the
done
door on
with
yourself if you didn't build around it, right?
But the thing is, I'm not saying I'm going to entirely just ignore. I'm not going to be just not build around it at all. I have a few things, but for the most part, it's not the focus of my deck. The focus of my deck would be get my win cons on the board, and before you all find the answer, strip your mana base from you because you ramped a million times, so you can't answer me. And like that's the game plan.
That's how you use Armageddon correctly. Like, you don't fire it off if you're not ahead on board. I think any deck can really do it, but if you build around it, obviously it gets much better, right? Like, if you can give your entire if you can Teferi's Protection in response to Armageddon, like, that seals the game. Or Heroic Intervention, give all your things indestructible and then destroy. It's better. But like, yeah, most aggro decks, that's how you used Armageddon back in the day, right? Is
You're an aggro deck. You build
Yeah.
around it.
Yeah.
It's like Wheel of Fortune, right? If you build around it because you empty your hand and you're gonna guarantee to draw 7, it's great. But if you're like draw, go, control, and you put wheel in, you're like, this is terrible, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
that's
have
awful.
a full grip, I'm wheeling, and everyone's just getting cards.
I like it.
I don't know
That's
how we ended up on
Our hot
lands
takes is
again
just
somehow.
destroy
We're not.
everything.
We're not.
After
okay, let's
last
get
week,
off lands.
yeah.
Let's get off lands. We're
Oh.
done lands.
Okay.
We're
How are
done
you
lands.
blowing up
Seth, hit us
lands
with a hot
today?
take.
I'm okay. Yeah. So I'm going to play more Blood Moons. Technically not blowing up. No, I'm going in a very different direction. I don't even know if this is a hot take, but I've been thinking about this for a while. And let me see if I can explain this, how it makes sense. But basically, I want to build worse decks. I want to build less optimally. I think part of the issue that I've had with Commander recently is I feel like I've gotten too comfortable at building Commander decks, and I just focus on playing like the same cards that you fall in this comfort zone. You play the same staples, you play the same cards over and over again. And one card that's really made me realize this was Mind's Eye. Mind's Eye, a card that I stopped playing altogether. I thought it kind of got power creeped out of the game, and then I randomly threw it back in a deck, and it did really well, and it felt really good. And then I started playing it again, and it made me think like, maybe I'm doing it wrong, and maybe I need to just like focus on not worrying so much about playing the most optimal thing, the newest thing, the best thing in each slot. And maybe I should just like make my decks a little bit worse and like play some of these cool cards that I used to really like, and maybe they're not the best anymore, but they're still pretty good. And like, that's what the format's about anyway. So I think I got to build my decks worse, as weird as that sounds.
Oh, Seth, come on now. You got to eat your veggies too, though. You know you got to eat your veggies. Like, you got to have the ABCs of a deck. I do that all the time. I play terrible cards. I play Shadow Mage Infiltrator. Then I'm gonna Armageddon you. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's great. I think that's exactly how you should play Commander. But I still think that despite that, I would honestly love to see this where, despite you wanting to build worse decks, I'm curious to see if you'll run into a thing where I've also just had to be like, okay, I need to still have interaction.
So
I still need to have this.
That's the challenge, right? That's why this is the one I'm not sure it's going to work out, because I do have this fear that if you do that too much, you're just not going to keep up with the rest of the table, right? Like, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage. Your deck's not really going to compete and keep up with what everyone else is doing. If everyone else is playing One Rings and Teferi's Pros, and you're playing, Fogs and Mind's Eye, and, you might be at a bit of a disadvantage.
Whoa, those are S tier. What are you talking about?
Fogs are
I mean,
garbage,
compared
right?
to Teferi's Protection, like, if you're playing...
So my New Year's resolution was precisely this. and I have never done it. So I have this really cool Wrath of God, the psychedelic Wrath of God, and like I never play Wrath of God, right? I'm like, there's like Undo Inversion, Al Revelation, Farewell. Spoiler: to date, I've never played my Wrath of God. Like you can never fit in.
Aw.
You get one choice: either your theme is jank, or your support is jank, right?
Yeah.
And normally we go for the jank theme, right? You don't play like, I don't know, like an Atraxa deck or a Yuriko deck or something, and then put like jank support cards, but you do play like Oxen or something, right? And then you put in like Trouble in Pairs to cover that up, right? So if you play jank in both slots, you literally do nothing and die. So that is the problem, right? Like, how do you make sure your deck is reasonable, while playing pet cards? And usually you have a few slots for your pet cards. But if you put too many of them, your deck is useless. If you put one or two in, it's like fine, right? So I don't know how you balance this if you
But
go like
really-
real jank.
But really, though, like, how different is Wrath of God to whatever Wrath you are playing? Like, is it really going to be a
Very.
deal breaker? Like you think in most of like casual commander games, is it really going to matter? Like, let's say you did that with 10 cards in your deck, 20 cards in your deck. Do you think is it really going to make your deck that much worse in a 4-player
difference
game where
between
there's
a Wrath
politics
going
going
off
on?
Because someone flawless maneuvered versus the Farewell snapping off the whole table,
But-
right? Like it actually makes a huge difference, right? Like how much is the One Ring versus a Sign in Blood? You're like, that's a lot of cards,
Well,
right?
like-
A Fog versus the Fairies Pro, that's a huge
Yeah.
difference, right? So you just gotta accept it. Like if you want to do it, that's cool. I sometimes replace my Constant Miss with a different fog.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is the cool fog. I got to show you guys this cool fog. But it's correct to play the Constant Miss.
Well,
But I can't
Yeah.
replace the Fairies Pro with like I don't know, like
But-
like what's a Blossoming Defense or something,
But-
right? Like like that doesn't do
should
the same
we?
thing.
but this is okay. So this is my brand for like a decade. This is how I brew. It's like the reason why I started budget brews is because I kept running really too powerful decks. I was a spike in my group, and I'm like, well, how do I get away from all these staples? Like, how do I get away from like the mana crypt and stuff? Because we played with whatever we wanted, honestly, back in the day. And I was like, well, I'll pick a budget restriction. I'll say this deck is $25, and now I can't run the Smothering Tide. I can't run the Ristic Study. I can't run these things. Now, how do I find a replacement for it? And that's literally what I've been doing for all of Commander, and I think I've made it work. I think Richard
Yeah.
definitely hit it where you need to, if you're going like extreme budget, you need to find a commander that is extremely powerful to help you carry it. But if you're not going extreme budget, you could just go extreme theme. So, for example, I have a Changeling deck, and my Changeling deck was too strong. So what I did was I said every single non-land card in the deck must refer to a creature type. So goodbye, all my tutors. So it was like Bring to Light, Wargate, that made it like way too consistent. And instead, I have to rely on like Cateron Summons, which finds a mercenary from my thing, and like you can make it work, and it will still work very well. Like I have a 6-drop deck. Every single card is mana value 6. It still works. Like Richard, you saw it played. We played it on Patreon game, and it works out fine. And like basically every single one of my decks are slowly turning into like has to have a restriction placed on it. And I think that's Seth how you do it. Is like if you go super hard on the theme and see if you could find interaction, card draw, and stuff that fits your theme. And I think you'll be surprised at how many options there are there. Like it's very easy to grab, you're in a white deck, you've grabbed the Smothering Tide, but maybe based on your theme, there's actually a ramp card that works maybe not just as well, but like
Hedron
does
Archive.
a good job.
Hedron Archive.
Hedron Archive.
I can bring back my
Does the-
Hedron Archives. Yeah.
Does
So
the
how-
ramp
sure.
card or the Hedron Archive have an anime art?
Damn, that's true.
How do you balance public perception? So, for example, I play a lot of cards just because everyone says they're bad. So, like, say, like Dousing Dagger, Fog. Like, I
Mhm.
think they're like S plus 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 tier, but because everyone always memes on me for it, I'm like, oh, I gotta play this all the time until you guys ban it, right? Because it's so powerful.
Why?
But then, like, the public perception is they suck, right? But I'm like, whoa, like, what do I do here? Do I pretend they suck and then play a different card, or do I pretend it's S tier? Like, how do you how do you balance that? Because my goal is to get all my meme cards banned, right? Like cards I think are really good, and I'm like,
Right?
you guys think they suck? I'm gonna keep playing them, right? Like they suck. What do you want, right?
Field of the Dead was not a meme card.
Yeah.
Everybody told
Yeah,
you
I
it
don't
was
think,
good, Richard.
anybody said Field of
Get
the
out
Dead
of
sucked.
here.
Okay,
Or
Field of the Dead
Glacial
doesn't
Chasm.
count, but like Fog, I'm gonna fog you guys until you guys ban it. The Glacial
Bring it.
Chasm
I
beat
have.
it,
I
right?
promise you this.
Bring the
I will
fog.
never ask for a ban.
Like a
on
Dowsing Dagger, I'm gonna play it into the ground, right? Like, you know, I think they're S tier, but you guys are like, well, that they suck, right?
Keep
So
playing them.
I mean, I think
yeah,
that's
you just
yeah.
keep playing them.
Yeah, good.
I think it's fine if it's what you want to be playing. I guess I just
Yeah.
feel like I don't know. I remember when I used to be building commander decks, I wouldn't be like, oh, I have to play Farewell because that's the best wrath. Sometimes I'd be like, hey, you know what? Phyrexian Rebirth is a cool card. I'm gonna jam that in my deck. It makes a token. That's kind of neat. And I think that's like I want to get back to that. I don't know how to get back there necessarily after like 10 years of building decks, but I want to get back to that place somehow because I miss that aspect of like commander
Ultimate
and commander deck
Guard.
building.
comment of the week number 2. There was a comment in last week's podcast, and it's not that commander players want a certain card pool, because we're always like, oh, I remember back in the day this happened. Commander players yearn for a time when we all sucked at the format. Like,
That might be
remember
true.
when we're like,
That might be
Commandeer Soul
true.
Ring Strip Mine you. Like, that's a terrible play, but we did it so happily, right? Because it was so funny, and because we all didn't know what we're doing. But now we're like, oh my god, we're so sweaty. We know this is a terrible play. I'll just let him pop off instead. You know, like we just
Yep.
yearned from when we all sucked at the format. We didn't
Yeah.
understand card advantage and tempo and things like that, and just did whatever. Right? I think that's kind of
That might be
what we
true.
want.
I think it's half.
It's like your
You get to
childhood.
close-
You were
I don't
dumb.
think you get to close the door or the box on power creep.
Yeah, like,
I don't think you can. I think like as much as you want to go back to that, right? I would love to go back to just
Glacial
like, being able to
Chasm
play.
crop rotation has existed since Commander
That
Clash
has
started.
always been there. That has always
right?
been
But like
there.
we're like, oh, wait a minute.
Oh, yeah, but the
Wait a
tuners to find them every single game were not always like.
Yeah.
crop
I did-
rotation's been around since since the
No,
90s.
not crop rotation. All the other tutors and ways to ramp, right?
Oh, the power
Like-
creep is insane. Smothering Tide didn't exist 10 years ago, you know? Well, I mean,
That is true.
maybe it has.
Yeah,
I
like
don't know.
you,
Time
you
goes
can't,
by.
you can't shut the door on that. And I promise you now that you've it's a bit of a bittersweet situation. Now that you've been able to play with like the upgraded tools, how do you go back, right? I mean, and it's not even. It is also like you had mentioned. At some point, you do start actively falling behind with the rest of the table, and this isn't like a build for optimization thing. Like I think that in order for you to have fun and do what you want to do, you need your veggies, right? And that just becomes more of a problem as the power gap continues to get bigger. So I don't. It's not that you can't play pet cards, because I play tons of them all the time. And yeah, sure, maybe some of my pet cards are deemed like the worst things to happen in Commander, but that's because I have special memories with them, right? And well, most of them. And then there's like, but like a lot of my pet cards, I still play. I play all of them, or as many of them as I can. But I can't. I can't lie to myself and be like, oh, well, I'm not going to play any farewells just because, example, I have the Rock Band poster Decree of Pain in all my decks. I love that card, but it kind of sucks compared to a
That's
Oh,
lot of
S
other
tier.
users.
That's
Okay.
S-tier.
That's
Okay.
sad to hear. I strongly disagree with it. I feel like you have to build good decks, right? Like you still have to have your interaction. You still have to have stuff that like you don't just fall apart. You can't just put all your pet cards in a single deck, because there's not gonna. You won't be able to cast them, right? You won't be able to cast all your pet cards if you don't have ramp, you don't have interaction and stuff. But like, I've never come to a deck being like, man, I can't run this white deck unless I have Smothering Tide. I can't run this blue deck unless I have Mana Drain and Rhystic Study. Like, I've never had a single card. There's not a single card in Commander that I'm like, I cannot build this deck unless I have this card. I feel
What if
like
your
But you
pet
will
card-
always put the broken card draw within your restraints into the deck, right? Like
yeah.
if it's a budget restraint, you're gonna find the best one. If it's like a thematic one, you're gonna find the best one. Like you would never actively be like, oh, I don't need card draw, I don't need ramp, right?
No,
like you
no,
always
actually.
optimize it within the constraints that you have, right?
But I took out Sol Ring from every single one of my paper decks, and they're in my budget constraint, but I just don't run it.
But
'cause
that's because they're socially banned.
No,
At
Soul
least
Ring's not
according to
socially
our
banned.
philosophy, right?
It's
I mean,
banned
to
on
our
Mana
philosophy, it is, right? Yeah.
But like I don't run it because I don't like the games that they show up on turn one and stuff. So like I just don't run it. I've been fine. I don't know. It's possible,
It's
Seth.
the Phil special.
Join me.
It's like refuses to play Ugin. Like there are certain cards that
Yeah.
each refuse to play.
Krim
because they're
refuses
so
to play extra
broken.
turns.
But then
you know?
we play like the other 60 broken cards.
Yeah. Hey, you gotta
Yeah,
have a
Ugin,
code.
Avenat's augury. How you doing?
I've always found that hilarious. Yeah, like where we draw the lines in the sand are
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
pretty-
arbitrary.
pretty.
I'm like, I'll never play Ristic Study One Ring. It's fine.
Yep.
But yeah, I had one ring in my Selenium deck and I took it out because I kept stomping with it. And I was like, all right, it's thematic because it's a life swap deck and it makes me lower my life total. But I took it. Same thing with Necropotence. I was like, it's good. It fits the theme, but then I just took it out
But
because
what if you weren't stomping? What if you were equal in your pod? Would you take out the One Ring still?
no, because then it's my higher power deck.
Yeah.
And then I just run it
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that way. There's nothing wrong with running high power cards. It's just you don't.
I mean, you have
I don't
to
think
at
you need
least
to
run within your power level, right? But
Yeah.
once you're in your power level, like everything is game.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I got a good one. I'm pretty sure this is correct. I've also been doing this for the past several games. I'm off the rat meta.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
Here's why I'm
Oh,
off the rat meta.
good.
It's not because of Seth, okay? So this is the swords to plowshares argument just applied to mass interaction. So Seth this season has been playing exceptionally greedy. He just draws and ramps. He basically does the Richard strategy, but he doesn't play the rats. So at one point we were at the meme of 9 rats. So I was like, oh, I'm playing like 6, 7, 8 rats. Seth just ramps. I rat the board for him. He just keeps drawing cards. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm just falling further and further behind with every wrath, right? Like, this is not helping. So if there's someone playing for a later game than you by drawing more cards and ramping harder, the 9 rats is a feared drawback. So I'm back to like the 0 wrath meta. I play like 1 wrath, and now I play like 8 fogs. Like, I'm not even joking you. So they're not literal fogs, but they're all like a single card designated to keeping me alive. So when someone has a massive board or a massive engine going, I make sure I do not die that turn. So if they happen to swing at me, I'm alive. But if they swing at Seth should be dead because he drew too many cards and ramped too hard. He doesn't have
That
the
just happened
defense,
last
right?
game, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm talking about like actual fog. I'm talking things like dress down. I'm talking about like split second cards, things like that. Not swords to plowshares, by the way. I haven't included that one, but there's a bunch of like fog-like effects, and I've been liking it so far. Right? Like Krim's like Richard Wrath. I'm like, okay, bro, I don't have one. Just pass the turn, and then you do your thing. And if someone tries to go after you, you use your 1 counter. And I think you need like maybe 3 or 4 turns of fading death with your interaction, and then you should be good to go, right? So rather than reset the board,
Richard, you should have
Don't die.
never said that. You should have never said that.
so what do you think? 0 rats, or like I play like I play like Decree of Pain because I want to draw cards, right? Or like maybe
Yeah.
1 boom pile that you can tutor up, but like the board wipe meta only works when everyone plays into it, but the group as a whole has built for the board wipe meta. So if you cast the board wipe, you actually fall behind. So you just draw cards too and then fog your way out of it.
I think you're right. I've like found myself doing that too. I never was as heavy on Wrath as you were, but I've noticed that I've been down to like 1 Wrath, 2 Wraths in a lot of decks because I think you're really right though. Like if the board's just gonna get swept, why not just have a handful of cards and like develop your mana that you're not allowed to sweep, and then eventually have some big turn where you win the game? Like it seems like a logical thing to do if people are just gonna Wrath the board every turn.
I'm so excited for some free wins next season. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Oh boy. All right.
Oh,
Y'all keep saying
No,
that.
no rats, no swords. Let me just assemble my let me assemble my engines. Let me
PG.
just casually. I'll casually draw all the cards, and then when you have a couple fogs, well, guess what? I have the counter spells for it. It's wonderful. Don't touch my engines. Great. What? No interaction.
I've been a little relaxed on the notion thieving, and now that I'm gonna try some more LD, even in non-LD decks. We'll see where we go with
Can
it.
you imagine? We
Oh,
just like
God.
somebody just drops a Draneth Magistrate like turn 2, and then people like, well, I have no wraths and I have no swords. I guess my fog will
Yeah.
if you attack me for the 1, my fog
Connor,
will
I-
fade it.
I think
Like,
we're gonna
okay.
punish the greeters, right?
This is
You
gonna
ready
be
to
great.
punish the greeters?
It hasn't been happening.
So good.
So you know who put me on this idea? Phil. Phil plays like 0 interaction, like period. He plays like
Yeah.
1 Swords to Plowshares, no like no wraths, no fogs, no generous. He plays like literal nothing, and he just
How old is
ramps,
Super?
draws cards, and asks questions.
And then
and, like,
dies.
Well,
And dies, yeah,
people
but
wrath him, and then like whoever was ramping harder like wins, right? But I'm like, actually, I'll just let Phil kill Seth. I'm like, cool, right? Like
alright.
Phil can try to kill me through propaganda Mazavith, and then if you don't play the spirited companion blocker, you die, right? Or if Tomer's putting the engine there, he can wrath, right? Like,
Why would I
I
wrath
don't
my
know,
own
Bob.
board?
Well, it depends. Do you have the big board or not, right? Because
Yeah.
you can
Right.
run into the rat still, right? So
But like,
like fog has been so good that the meta to me has shifted around fog, and you can trick people, right? Like dress down, like does kind of a fog effect, but it like gets around Dranith Magistrate or something, right? Like if you actually want to turn that off, you can turn it off.
sure.
There's the black spell, the 2 mana split second that turns something into a 0/2. Like there's a bunch of things that are hardier than a Swords to Plowshares and not quite a fog that lets you stay alive, right? Or like life gain. You just like gain 30 life, okay, right? I'm like that's like 2 fogs, right? That's good enough, right? So I've been liking it so far. Now, if everyone goes back to the no wrath meta, maybe you go back to the wrath meta, right? But
Yeah.
so far, to me, 9 rats has not been the answer because you clog up with rats. Someone else is like using 6 mana to progress the game plan, and you're just like wrathing, and you're not drawing cards. Like Decree of Pain is the exception.
I have never once felt like I am clogged on wraths.
Really?
Yeah,
I like
I'm
how
like,
the pendulum
thank
was
God.
like, all right, so like I was like, okay, I run like 4 wraths, that's pretty good. And then the pendulum over here is just like, no, you have to run like 10 wraths. And then from 10 wraths it goes to 0. And I'm like, but what about 4? What about
You haven't
3?
played with Phil, okay? Phil plays a single thing. You're like, oh my god, I need to wrath the board, right? Like, like
Yeah.
Phil's value is out of control, right? Like you need the 6 wraths to keep up with Phil alone. But so you're like, wow, I don't know. I'll just let Phil do the thing and kill Krim or something, right? Like that's like Phil changes the whole meta game. You got to meta. The whole meta has changed around Phil.
Is
because
Phil
of how
just
much
the
value-
strongest player? Like the topic has always been the Phil meta game.
He
I wanna
plays
see-
okay. So I was actually playing a land. I was building a lands deck. So I'm like, you know who's the lands master in our group? Phil. So I looked at like just a random deck of his. There's so much ramp that like blows my mind. There's like
Yeah.
like 8 2-mana ramp spells. Like he's like just all ramp card draw, no interaction. I'm like, this is why he always has so many lands and so many cards. This
I wanna
deck is
see-
just literally ramp and card draw.
We better do a
We're
stats
always-
episode because like everybody's terrified of Phil, but I have an inkling that he's like lowest on the win percentage. Like he's not even.
Well, why
That's
is
because we all
that?
kill him first.
That is
Well,
good.
yeah.
We can kill him first.
I don't know how
If
he's
we
like
let
the
him
number
get
1
to late
threat
game,
and
he
yet
wins.
never wins. There's a discrepancy, is all I'm saying here.
Never wins because why? He gets the respect.
Yeah,
He
it's also a
does.
form of respect. If we let Phil untap on turn 5, we're dead. So we got
Yep.
Phil is easily the most respected player at the table.
All I'm saying is I think fogs are powerful in specific situations, right? And that's usually trying to make sure you don't die from combat damage. And I do think that the majority of win conditions for decks in 2024 are going to be combat based. Is going to be swinging for lethal, especially with our group because we don't really run combos that much. But I do know like one of the most popular archetypes outside of combat is like aristocrats, where the fogs do not matter, I don't think. I think you really need to have sweepers and exile-based removal to stop like infinite drain, pitiless plunder combos, and then just combos in general too. So like I maybe fogs, all fogs will work for like a combat-based meta, and that could work for us. But like if people just switch out to like combos, and
So
stuff,
rather
if
than
you-
playing 9 rats, you play 2 rats and 7 instant
Fogs.
speed answers that are only for you. So if
Ah.
you feel you're dying to aristocrats, whatever you feel like, maybe a dress down will do it, maybe a swords will do it, whatever, right? Like you feel whatever's best for your meta as a single card to save you when you're gonna die, right? Whereas a wrath always saves the whole board. Right, so you are just looking out for your bacon, and maybe the answer against aristocrats is to gain life. I don't know, right? Because it's loss of life, it's harder to deal with. Maybe it's like an intervention pact. That's one of my secret texts I haven't told you guys about. So like I don't know. There's lots of cool ways, like an angel's grace. to stay alive without, helping the rest of the table while you're doing it at instant speed, right? And most of the time you won't be targeted, right? Like there's only like a 33% chance you're targeted at a full table, right? So if they don't target you, you get to live another day without wasting anything. Whereas the Wrath is sorcery speed. Once it gets scary, you gotta fire it off, right? You gotta fire it off because your interaction is sorcery speed.
And
So-
Richard, you benefit
And
so hard from the fact that Seth and Phil draw a million cards and ramp all game, so no one pushes the the damage towards you.
I mean, I think it makes sense though. Like, you had a really good point there. If you Wrath, you're kind of helping the whole table, or like most of the table. You're hurting one person who's ahead and helping the other two and yourself. When you Fog, you're just helping yourself. Like, isn't that like better
So
in a
you're
lot of
saying-
situations?
Fog
Selfless.
helps the table too, though.
No.
If they're
I am
trying
a
to kill everyone.
selfless commander player. I truly am selfless. I'm not just trying to save my bacon. I'm trying to save all of our bacons, right?
I don't
You're
know
just trying
how.
to
So
blow
I
up all
should
of our
one
be-
bacon.
slot for it.
I should be revered.
I don't know how
and
board wipes.
loved by the table.
We went
So
from board wipes are way better than targeted removal because of the card advantage, because it's dealing with a lot of threats. It puts you ahead, and now suddenly that argument's just out the window. It actually doesn't help you really. It helps the entire
Because
board.
everyone played around
And now
it.
we're gonna-
Like Seth never
Yeah.
plays a mana dork or a
It's-
mana rock. Everyone's playing bounce lands. Like everyone's playing the Richard meta, so you got to adjust. But if everyone's slamming mana rocks again and everyone's slamming mana dorks, then yeah, you just rat them into oblivion and win the game. Like that's literal ruination. Except you swept the board while you're at it, right? But if everyone's prepared for the wrath, you're just falling behind. So you next level them with the Fog. And then once everyone starts running insult to injury, you gotta next level them with something else, right?
Oh yeah, that insult to injury has gone into all my red decks, by the way. Not because of this meta, just because I think it's great.
All right. Who's got a hot take?
So I got one I want to mention that actually me and Krim kind of like had a very similar one on here. So we can do like team up on this one because I had, and this is something that's coming up on a Commander Clash deck in the near future that we haven't done yet, but there is a deck coming up like this, but a deck that plays essentially no ramp, no mana rocks, no ramping, but instead focuses on playing more efficient cards. So rather than trying to get up to these big like expensive things, keeping the curve low to the ground, being able to impact the board turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, and basically building your deck like a constructed deck almost, where you're not usually ramping, in modern or in standard. Instead, you're just like getting things down on the board early, being able to make an impactful play every turn. Krim, I know you had one sort of similar to that. What was your take?
I mean, it was something that we talked about that we wanted to try, I think, around the New Year's, and it was just this episode was a reminder, and I do want to try just like going up to like 42 lands, 43 lands, not playing ramp, not playing mana rocks, nothing tangible, and this helps me rebuild after I Armageddon myself. So like I just want to go like up to like 43 lands or something like that, 42 lands, and like you had mentioned, it's pretty important, like to try to curve out in the early game. I want to try to curve out in the early game, like have 1s and 2s and 3s, and then for the rest of the game, just like tax those that are like just sitting there and doing nothing. So like I those that are sitting there and doing nothing, I want to just keep putting my pressure on them. So we're gonna see like because before it was always like Richard who got on the ground early, right? And he would always be the one that could politic his way out of anything because he's the only one that had a board. And when I go to 43 lands, funny enough, this season I've flooded probably more often than not. But
you play
I'll
43 lands.
I didn't even play 43 lands, but like I think this is going to be a lot easier with now. I can just increase the MDFCs, but also and like a few more basics. But for the most part, I do want to try just more lands and no ramp or mana rock.
I mean, I think it works.
The Sam Black special.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This was what Sam
Yeah.
Black proposed, and then he got slammed over it, I think.
I don't know about playing more lands. I didn't come around to that. I'm playing the same amount of lands, but just being efficient and not ramping.
I think like
What is an efficient card that you would play that you don't play today? Like, what does efficient even mean?
so what?
So I'm
what
thinking
type
more
of
like-
commander. What deck is this?
I
What's
mean,
the
it could
secret?
be any deck. No, well, okay. So the deck that's coming up is in a cool deck actually from the new set, the Demon, where you sack stuff to put something into play from your hand. Cool, the Unrepent.
Oh yeah.
It's a Rakdos deck. But instead of trying to like spend the early game developing your mana, getting mana rocks on the battlefield, ramping. What if instead you're focused on like turn 1, I'm going to try to get down a Ragavan, let's say. Turn 2, I'm going to try to get down, a Jadar, Dark Confidant. Turn 3, I'm going to be trying to play my Mayhem Devil, my Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and trying to play
drawing cards and ramping. What? You've just described drawing cards.
That's like my Rakdos deck.
You're ramping with the monkey. You're drawing cards
That's
with
a
the
Ragavan. That's a Ragavan. It just
I
happens
think-
to make a treasure. That doesn't count.
Yeah. Like I think
Seth is gonna play Modern.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Modern
think
being
this-
commander. Then the
I think
One
it-
Ring. Maybe a
Yeah,
Arcana
yeah.
Cruelty.
I think it's like really deck dependent. Like, for example, my baby that you might remember runs this exact same thing. I'm playing 1 drops, 2 drops that are evasive, and then turn
Oh, God,
3, I
are we
play my
talking
baby.
Edric?
Edric, yes. So that's the same
Unbanned.
black method, right? It's like I'm not playing mana dorks. I'm not ramping turn 1 or 2. I'm playing evasive beaters, and then turn 3, I'm turning it into card draw. Same thing like my Kiri Cauldron deck is like turn 1, turn 2. You're just dropping creatures. Turn 3, play a Kiri, and you smash and you draw cards off your equipped creatures. And I think like also white is also really good at it too, because like Knight of the White Orchid and Loyal Warhound, they ramp, but they also develop your board at the same time too. Even I hate to say it, but like Spirited Companions, they do that. The OG Richard
Dude,
special.
are you ready for Splinter Twin in Commander? The new corgi, the new corgi card. You can blink the Spirited Companion. You just blinked a dog.
Oh yeah,
And then it came back. You drew another card. That's Splinter Twin.
That's
we
insane.
broke it.
That's broken. Yep.
Exactly.
So I think it's very
Y'all
possible.
didn't do anything. You all just described methods of drawing cards.
Yes.
Right?
Hey,
like you're like,
I did.
well, turn
I
1,
didn't-
2, 3. You're set up for the card draw. That's the same as turn 1 Farseek, turn 2 Rhystic Study, right? Like you just set up for your card draw and then drew a bunch of cards. You haven't described a means where you don't draw extra cards nor ramped extra mana. You've just
Hello?
done it with creatures.
Hello? Hello.
Krim
Hello?
has described it by just playing land the whole game.
I think it's a hot take for Seth though, because Seth is like, I'm going to tap out and put down a Mind's Eye and then hope nobody kills me. So like,
So now he plays a Spirited Companion into Mind's Eye and
Yes!
you're calling it a new
that's
strategy.
better.
I'm a new person now. I'm a whole new man.
I'm a
Whole new
blocker.
man.
That's like
I hit you for
You know-
1. I have an aggro deck.
My Spirited
changed-
Companion attacked.
I've
It's gonna
changed
attack
one
this time,
card.
I promise.
I've changed one card in this deck list. It is now a new deck.
But what do you
I
think
mean-
of the notion that the game ends with you have 6 lands in play, 0 cards in hand, and the game has ended somehow? Like literal no card draw, no ramp. Right? Like think like an actual aggro deck in Modern where control players 8 cards and 8 mana or something, and then you have nothing, but you got in there and you beat the game. You beat them. Like, isn't that just impossible in Commander? Like outside of an actual fast combo deck, right? Like you have to
Yeah.
play a combo deck, and then therefore you just like Splinter Twin them on turn 4. But like you can't do 120 worth of damage without drawing cards, without getting more mana, without someone interrupting you and like stopping it, right?
I think you're right. I think that's definitely true that would be really hard to do. Maybe I kind of like explained it poorly, but like what if instead of playing Mind Stones and instead of playing like these dedicated ramp cards, what if I'm playing things that actually like progress the game and do things and also can like sort of fulfill those purposes? So like
Yes.
instead of playing a Mind Stone and just like I'm going to dirtle around and do nothing, what if I play a Ragavan, which is actually like dealing damage and maybe it gets in some hits and it gives me some extra mana too? Like, so I think that's what I was more thinking, because I think you're right. Like if you really play nothing that generates card advantage, nothing that does anything, Krim's going to cast a Wrath, you're empty-handed, and you're going to be very sad the rest of the game. But you don't have to necessarily be playing Mind Stone into Cultivate, into like, there's other ways of doing it, right? That are also like progressing the game rather than not progressing the game.
So Esper Sentinel
that.
into Loyal Warhound into Solemn Simulacrum.
Yes.
Which is exactly how we've been playing. Like
But that's not how
you have
Seth
some
has been playing.
blockers, you drew cards, you ramped, you're ready for the mid game where you're gonna just keep making land drops, drawing more cards, but you have like
When
some
I-
chump
when I-
blockers in case Krim decides to start attacking you, right? Like, you got it, right? You can block. But if you get wrapped, you're like, whatever, it's fine. I already cantripped the creatures and I already ramped with them. It's okay, right?
Mhm.
I think this season I have somehow come out the gates as the most aggro player.
Yes.
And
Krim is
I
the most
think that
weird player because he plays red and Rakdos a lot, and he does a lot of damage.
I
at
love
Ascent and
playing
Avernus.
style in this. I feel like we played the same decks a lot, and I really like it. That's why I'm always
well,
I'm rooting for the Krim at the table, which is really weird.
that's why I
to
told
say.
her I have a spot for you right here in my empty
I'm not-
arm. I told you, you're one bad day away from a chaos.
I'm not
player,
playing
so-
chaos. I'm just saying I
so
really like
join
aggro.
us, Tomer. but I will say that this season I've been the most aggressive, and I think I could turn that heat up a little bit, just by curving out even harder, right? Like, because I think I built decks that are like okay, not having 1-drops, 2-drops, except for Roiling Vortex. That's just the greatest thing ever. But like, I can probably turn the heat up in that department. And I think I am. And I think that helps if I go up to like 42 lands, 40 lands, and then a good amount of them are actually also untapped lands. So just like focusing on optimizing turns 1 through 4 to having pressure, and then the rest of the game, like play it like my humans commander deck, where I optimize playing turns 1, 2, and 3, and then for the rest of the game, I'm just gonna hold up things that blink and phase me out.
I like it. That's
He's
my
Phil here.
favorite. It's literally my favorite style.
Y'all casting Ragavans on turn 6.
Yeah.
Phil is casting like 3 Amanata's Augury on you. like so
Yeah.
much can go wrong curving out, and so much can go right when you have like infinite cards and mana in the late game that.
But
Like
here's the thing,
it's hard for
no-
me to make sure that you actually aggro out the whole table. Like 3
Oh,
people
you
are stopping
can.
you.
You can. It's just that everybody gets upset. He's spaghetti, and
Wait.
that's not a cool card.
Who?
But
It's actually very hard. No, even
who's
if no one
stopping
gets
you?
upset, like
all right, just
because 3 people
I'll show
band
you.
together to draw cards and to draw rats, and even though we only have 3 rats collectively,
Wait, is
we
you?
secret rendezvous
Yeah,
each
no,
other.
This is the perfect time to do it because both
Yeah.
Seth and Richard just said we're cutting all board wipes. So it's like this is
Yeah.
prime. Curve out your creatures.
Yeah,
What's
curve out,
stopping
baby.
you? What the 8?
Are you
fog?
talking about
Like,
Armageddon's
here's the
Grim?
thing, right? You put
I'm
the
not
rats
saying
back in,
anything.
and then
You
like
might be talking about-
insta-lose when the rat hits, right? Like
And then
I'm
you
pretty
think
sure
he's-
Grim's saying he's gonna curve out and then just Armageddon us, and that's the way you beat the whole day. I'm pretty
Dude.
sure that's what he's hinting at there.
isn't that the next step? Obviously, like you curve out for creatures, and turn 4 you Armageddon, and you they scoop.
But it's like
Between
you
that-
play monkey, they play spirited companion. You're like, well, I guess I can't hit them anymore, so I'm gonna hit the
I
other
know.
person.
I
And then
know,
they're
I
like, they get away, right? They play
Oh
solid.
no. See,
I'm
monkey isn't exactly pressure. Monkey is value, right? I think it is
Yeah.
value.
Wow.
I'm talking real pressure. I'm talking like Sarah Ascendance. I'm talking like champion of the parish or whatever, champion of the
Oh.
perished, and things like that are gonna hit you, right? And like where you're not gonna block with, like you can, but it's just a chump, right? You're not gonna trade. You're not gonna deter me from attacking. I think that is my game plan, to actually put real, like even more aggressive starts, and then try to just like blink and disrupt after.
I don't think the no wrath mat is gonna last very long.
I mean, I think the onus is on the aggro player to do the thing, and with 3 people sitting there, I think it's very difficult. Like by
It
default,
is.
the other decks will
It
win
is.
unless you get the nuts, right? Like,
Yep.
and like it doesn't matter how bad your cards are. Like a 10 mana 9/9 trample trumps whatever the heck efficient 1 or 2 drop you have, right? So by the time we get to the late game, like the other players just like dramatically outgun you. So like it's got to be combo kill. You got to actually turn 4 Splinter Twin everyone, and you're like, well, you ramped and don't have a counter spell, you're dead, right? like that's got to be what it's at. But I don't know about attacking with 1/1s. It's got to be like Edric, take an extra turn, take an extra turn, take an extra turn, you're dead, right? Like the combo kill,
yeah.
right?
Sure.
It's got to be, I guess, Descent. Like Krim's Descent was like pretty good, but
Descend into Avernus and Roiling Vortex and Sulfuric Vortex. If you see me in red, you can expect those cards in there.
Yeah, like he gets everyone really low. We all get super scared, but we always like find a way to dispatch him, right?
Yeah.
like collectively we can do it.
Don't sweat.
Yeah,
I mean, if you
so-
kill them,
the
all the
game ends.
enchantments
Interesting.
go away. Yeah.
yeah,
Then the game ends, right? Like y'all are like 5, and then
It does-
you
it
like
does
I
expedite
die,
the
my-
game.
and then
I like that.
I'm a big fan of that. I really like that too. Put the heat.
All right, Krim can sacrifice himself to be the aggro player.
I'll do it.
At the
I'll do it.
table.
I'll help you.
I'll do it, and then I'll LD you right after I turn out. You're gonna
Alright,
notice
so,
that
so knowing that
next
the LD
season-
is coming, Tomer, are you still going to help Krim aggro out the table, or are you going to start killing Krim?
Are you gonna notice? I just want you to notice something, Tomer. I know you're like
Be
you're
a
gonna see
race.
this too,
Who
but
can help
don't
you
be
first?
alarmed if I become a Boros mage at least, red, white, X.
I respect it.
At least that's the plan. Like, you build a board, you play a monkey, you Armageddon. Like, at least you're
Yeah.
ahead on board, rather than like random deck Armageddon. You're like, what is this? Nothing.
I
We
mean,
just
when I
reset
say
the game.
random deck Armageddon, I don't mean like here it is. My like every picture, every art has paintings in it, and then I LD. I'll
The
show-
biggest problem is
I'll
cards
show
like
you.
Blasphemous Act exist. So even if you snap off
They
the
do.
Armageddon, someone's like, one land and then Blasphemous Act, and then the game has been like super reset.
Well,
But-
what is the one thing that you see in a lot of the aggro decks?
Armageddon.
Like a lot of aggro decks have protection spells from that. Indestructible is just attached to everything. Boros Charm, because I'm going to be in Boros colors.
Yeah, but you need lands to cast those.
But if you're
That's
no,
why I got
but
43 lands.
Indestructible. I don't
43 land aggro deck.
if you're in,
Yeah.
well, if you're in an aggro deck, you got to be running protection spells for your army, right? Or else you're just going to
Yeah.
be like, I'm going to scoop at the first wrath that comes my way. So you're going to be running your Boros Charms. You're going to be running your Teferi's Pro. You're going to be running your Clever Concealments and all that stuff. You could just save
yeah.
your lands in the Armageddon phase, and if you don't have
Yeah.
the mana for that, then you'll have the mana for the next thing that comes.
The
I
problem
think-
is you don't have mana because you curved out like 3, 4, 5 without ramping. You don't have the mana to cast your
Yeah, but,
protection
like,
spell.
Flawless
it's like
Maneuver's
flawless
free.
maneuver or bust. Right?
Clever
Yeah.
Concealment's free. Like if you
Then you didn't
tap
attack.
the creatures. No, but you don't need to attack that turn if you Armageddon the same turn. right?
Yeah, exactly. I could just
You
wait.
need to attack the next turn. It's fine. I think
Oh, this is
I'm not gonna-
worse.
I'm not running.
Remember
I'm
that
not gonna
Ryu
run-
game where he refused to do anything because he had to save Ryu? He's like, gonna Armageddon, keep his 4 creatures untapped for the next 6 turns because he has to hold up Clever Concealment.
Wait. Let me draw
Wait,
land,
wait.
guys. I'll start attacking.
I got
hold on.
I'm Hadoukening, all right? That's what I'm doing.
It's beautiful. LP meta's back,
Uh,
baby.
Excited. This is all just to gaslight you guys into playing like Manador, so I'm just gonna run.
Yeah, you're actually going on.
Richard
You're on the
just sent us
15
some
more,
drafts, yeah.
15 more white
32
mana.
wrath.
Remember, these are experimental ideas that we're not sure about. So we're not sure about it, but I'm pretty sure I'm not playing shocks because I bought all the fancy Infinity shocks. So of course, I would then decide not to run any of them. Of course, right?
Did
Of
you get
course
the
it's gonna
Galaxy
happen.
foils? Those are the.
No,
Whoa.
no,
Those
not
are
the
so
Galaxy
expensive.
foils. Those are too rich for my blood.
Maybe
but-
if we get to 200k subs, you could get yourself a Galaxy foil. Like and subscribe.
So I think they look kind of ugly, but I got some Galaxy foil
Oh.
basics. We'll see what they look like, but they look kind of ugly in my
Yo.
opinion. No,
I've seen the
Wait.
Galaxy foil Godless Shrine in person, and it is gorge. It is very
Yeah,
nice.
all
I
of them
like
are,
how they look.
Stunning.
Yeah.
I like, yeah.
I'll have to.
If you don't like them, you can send it
Unfortunately,
to
I've
me.
cut all the shocks from my man.
You can always send
When
them
they
to
have
me, Richard,
Galaxy
it's
foil
fine.
bounce lands, call me up. Okay, hit me up. So those are our hot takes that we're not even sure about. Turns out we're not very sure about anything. So let us know what you think. Are any of these ideas worth exploring? Maybe you'll see some of these ideas coming up in a clash. And then leave a comment about your controversial hot take that you're not even sure about would be. And let's see if you make Ultimate Guard comment of the week. Let's see what the hottest. YouTube doesn't have sort by controversial. That's what we need. Sort by controversial would be the
I don't
true,
think we need sort by-
the true
Mm.
hot take. The truest hot takes would be buried somewhere.
Monkey paw curls.
So yeah, we'll see y'all back here next week.